Welcome to Mythology Matters. This channel explores forgotten gods, forbidden magic, legendary creatures, demons, witches, demonology, and the myths history tried to silence. From Greek and Norse mythology to dark witchcraft, occult scrolls, and supernatural lore, each video uncovers stories that shaped civilizations and still haunt us today. We don't just retell myths, we reveal their hidden meanings, power struggles, and chilling truths. If you're fascinated by ancient magic, mysterious rituals, and the line between myth and reality, Mythology Matters is where legends awaken and secrets are revealed. This channel is your gateway to the shadows of the past. Subscribe and discover why mythology still matters today. Thanks for watching.
Today, we uncover 7 legendary creatures so powerful even gods feared them. Welcome. Before the world was shaped by temples and thrones, there were beings so ancient, so terrifying, that even the gods whispered their names in fear. These were not mere monsters. They were forces of chaos, destruction, and forbidden power, capable of challenging divine rule itself. From creatures born of cosmic darkness to entities sealed away by desperate gods, their legends were meant to be forgotten. But myths never truly die, exploring the battles, prophecies, and warnings hidden in ancient mythology. Watch closely. Some knowledge was buried for a reason. Let's go. 1. Typhon, Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, Typhon stands as the ultimate embodiment of chaos, a being so vast and destructive that even the Olympian gods trembled before him. He is not merely another monster slain by a hero, nor a symbolic obstacle in a moral tale. Typhon represents the raw, untamed forces of the cosmos itself: earthquakes, volcanic fire, storms, and the primordial violence that predates order. Where many Greek myths revolve around balance, cleverness, or fate, the myth of Typhon confronts something far older and more terrifying: the possibility that order itself could be undone. Typhon's origins already mark him as a creature of existential threat. According to Hesiode's theogony, he was born from Gaia, the earth, and Tartarus, the deepest abyss beneath the underworld. This parentage is significant. Gaia often births monsters not out of malice, but out of rebellion. Typhon is conceived as a final response to Zeus, the young king of the gods, who had overthrown the Titans and imprisoned them. By uniting with Tartarus, Gaia produces a being that is not merely powerful but fundamentally anti-cosmic, a force designed to overturn the very structure Zeus had imposed upon the universe. Physically, Typhon defies simple description, and this is intentional. Ancient sources emphasize his overwhelming, almost incomprehensible form. He is said to be taller than mountains, with his head brushing the stars. From his shoulders sprout countless serpentine heads, each capable of speech, roaring with voices of gods, beasts, bulls, lions, and storms. His eyes blaze with fire, and from his hands extend coils of living snakes. Instead of legs, some accounts describe massive serpent tails that lash across the land. Typhon's body is not merely monstrous, it is excessive, exaggerated beyond reason, as though nature itself has lost restraint. This grotesque form reflects what Typhon represents. In Greek thought, monsters often symbolize disorder, but Typhon goes further. He is a fusion of elements that should not coexist in harmony: fire and storm, beast and god, earth and sky. His many voices suggest confusion and multiplicity, the breakdown of a single, ordered narrative of reality. Where Zeus rules through law and hierarchy, Typhon exists as a screaming contradiction, a living argument against the possibility of control. When Typhon rises to challenge Olympus, the gods respond not with immediate heroism, but with fear. In some versions of the myth, the Olympians flee Egypt, disguising themselves as animals to escape his wrath. This detail is crucial. It strips the gods of their usual dignity and presents them as vulnerable. Typhon is one of the few beings in Greek mythology who truly frightens the gods themselves. His arrival threatens not just their lives, but their legitimacy as rulers of the cosmos. The central confrontation between Typhon and Zeus is among the most dramatic episodes in Greek myth. Zeus attacks first, wielding his thunderbolts, the very symbols of divine authority. The sky burns, the earth shakes, and the seas boil as the two forces collide. Initially, Zeus appears dominant, hurling lightning that scorches Typhon's many heads. Yet Typhon is not easily defeated. In some traditions, he overpowers Zeus, wrapping him in his coils and tearing the sinews from his arms and legs. The king of the gods is rendered helpless, imprisoned in a cave, while Typhon hides the stolen sinews, effectively disabling cosmic order itself. This moment is extraordinary because it depicts Zeus not as an invincible ruler, but as a god who can fall. The cosmos teeters on the edge of collapse. Without Zeus's sinews, there is no thunder, no law, no stability. Chaos, embodied in Typhon, has temporarily won. It is only through cunning and alliance, often involving Hermes and Pan, that Zeus regains his strength. Once restored, Zeus returns to the battle with renewed fury. The final defeat of Typhon is absolute and symbolic. Zeus unleashes an unrelenting storm of thunderbolts, driving Typhon across the world. The monster flees, scorching lands and razing mountains as he goes. Eventually, Zeus traps him beneath Mount Etna, or in some accounts, beneath other volcanic regions such as Ischia or Mount Argius. Typhon's imprisonment explains volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. When the earth shakes or fire erupts from the ground, it is Typhon struggling beneath his prison, still alive but forever restrained. This ending is revealing. Typhon is not killed. He cannot be annihilated, only buried. Chaos is not destroyed, it is suppressed. Greek mythology does not suggest that order permanently eradicates disorder, only that it keeps it contained. Typhon remains a latent threat, a reminder that the forces of nature and destruction are always present beneath civilization's surface. Typhon's role in Greek myth extends beyond his own story. He is often described as the father of many famous monsters, including Cerberus, the Hydra, Chimera, Apophis, and the Sphinx, usually with Echidna as his mate. Through them, Typhon's legacy persists. Even after his defeat, his influence spreads into the world through creatures that challenge heroes and gods alike. This reinforces the idea that chaos, once unleashed, leaves echoes that cannot be fully erased. Symbolically, Typhon represents the primordial world before order, before names, laws, and boundaries. Zeus's victory over Typhon is therefore not just a physical triumph, but a metaphysical one. It marks the final consolidation of Olympian rule and the establishment of a cosmos governed by reason, hierarchy, and divine law. Yet the violence required to achieve this victory suggests an uncomfortable truth. Order itself is born from conflict and maintained through force. Psychologically, Typhon can be read as the embodiment of humanity's fear of uncontrollable forces. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and wildfires were not abstract phenomena to the ancient Greeks. They were immediate, terrifying realities. By personifying these forces in Typhon, the Greeks gave shape to their dread. Zeus's victory offered reassurance that these horrors were, at least in principle, subject to control, even if only barely. Typhon also stands apart from other monsters because he lacks moral framing. He is not punished for arrogance like the Titans, nor cursed for transgression like Prometheus. He simply exists as destruction incarnate. This absence of moral justification underscores his cosmic nature. Typhon is not evil in a human sense. He is immoral, a force that acts because it is his nature to do so. In later interpretations, Typhon becomes associated with foreignness and otherness. Greek writers sometimes link him to Egypt or the eastern edges of the world, reflecting cultural anxieties about the unknown. By placing Typhon at the margins of the world, the Greeks symbolically pushed chaos away from the center of civilization, even as they acknowledged its presence beneath their feet. Ultimately, Typhon is the final test of Zeus's right to rule. The Titanomachy proves Zeus's strength. The defeat of Typhon proves his legitimacy. After Typhon's fall, no greater challenge to Olympian authority arises. The universe, though still dangerous, is fundamentally ordered. Yet the myth refuses to let us forget what lies beneath that order. Every rumbling mountain, every eruption of fire, whispers Typhon's name. Typhon endures in myth because he embodies a truth that remains relevant. Chaos can be buried, restrained, and named, but never fully eliminated. Civilization stands not on the absence of disorder, but on its containment. Beneath every mountain of law and reason, something ancient still stays, waiting, breathing, and dreaming in fire. 2. Humbaba, Sumerian mythology. Humbaba, also known as Huwawa in earlier Sumerian sources, is one of the most haunting and symbolically complex figures in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. Best known from the Epic of Gilgamesh, Humbaba is a monstrous guardian of the cedar forest, appointed by the god Enlil to protect a sacred realm that lies beyond the borders of human civilization. Though often portrayed as a demon or brute, Humbaba is not merely a villain to be slain. He represents the boundary between the ordered world of cities and the untamed forces of nature, the divine law that restrains human ambition, and the moral cost of transgression disguised as heroism. To understand Humbaba is to confront the darker truths embedded within one of humanity's oldest epic narratives. In Sumerian tradition, Humbaba is not an embodiment of chaos for chaos's sake. Rather, he is a servant of cosmic order, fulfilling a role assigned by the gods themselves. Enlil, lord of wind, earth, and authority, places Humbaba as guardian over the cedar forest, a place both holy and dangerous. Cedars were precious in Mesopotamia, where timber was scarce. They symbolized divine abundance, durability, and the favor of the gods. By guarding the forest, Humbaba safeguards a resource that is not meant to be freely exploited by humankind. His existence enforces a divine boundary. Some realms are not meant to be conquered, only revered. Descriptions of Humbaba are deliberately unsettling. He is often depicted with a terrifying face, sometimes described as made of coiled entrails or possessing a roaring mouth like a storm. His breath is fire, his voice thunder, and his glance death itself. In certain versions, Humbaba wears 7 auras or cloaks of terror, each stripping courage from those who approach. These features are not random monstrosities but symbolic expressions of overwhelming natural power. Humbaba does not simply look frightening. He embodies fear as a cosmic force, the instinctive dread that prevents humans from trespassing where they do not belong. The most famous account of Humbaba appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the king of Uruk seeks eternal fame through extraordinary deeds. Accompanied by Enkidu, a wild man born of nature, Gilgamesh decides to journey to the cedar forest and kill Humbaba. This decision is framed as heroic ambition, yet it is rooted in restlessness, pride, and fear of mortality. Gilgamesh does not need to slay Humbaba for survival or defense. He seeks glory, renown, and proof of his greatness. From the very beginning, the expedition is an act of transgression against divine order. Enkidu's role in this journey is deeply ironic. Once a creature of the wild, Enkidu knows Humbaba personally in some versions and fears him profoundly. He understands the sanctity of the forest and the danger of violating it. Yet Enkidu has been drawn into human civilization and its values, including the pursuit of fame. His participation in Humbaba's death reflects the tragic severing of humanity from nature. The one who should defend the wild becomes complicit in its destruction, mirroring humanity's broader betrayal of the natural world. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu finally confront Humbaba, the encounter is not a straightforward battle. Humbaba speaks, pleads, curses, and negotiates. In several versions of the myth, Humbaba begs for mercy, offering servitude or submission. He reminds the heroes of Enlil's authority and warns of divine consequences. This moment is crucial. Humbaba is not mindless evil. He is articulate, aware, and bound by duty. His pleas introduce moral ambiguity, forcing the audience to question whether the heroes are justified or cruel. Gilgamesh hesitates at Humbaba's pleas, revealing an inner conflict between compassion and ambition. It is Enkidu who urges him to strike, warning that mercy will lead to disaster. This reversal is telling. The former wild man now speaks the language of conquest and fear, while the king briefly considers restraint. Ultimately, they kill Humbaba, severing his head and claiming victory. The act is celebrated as heroic, yet its consequences quickly unfold. Enlil is enraged by the killing of his appointed guardian and curses Enkidu, setting the stage for his death. The death of Humbaba marks a turning point in the Epic of Gilgamesh. It exposes the cost of human arrogance and the illusion of glory gained through destruction. While Gilgamesh achieves fame, he also triggers loss, grief, and the realization of his own mortality. Humbaba's fall is not the triumph of good over evil, but the violation of a sacred trust. The forest is plundered, its cedars cut down, and divine balance disturbed. In this sense, Humbaba becomes a martyr of cosmic order, sacrificed to human ambition. From a symbolic perspective, Humbaba represents nature as sacred, powerful, and unforgiving when disrespected. His monstrous appearance reflects how ancient urban societies perceived the wilderness as dangerous, alien, and morally ambiguous. Yet the myth also suggests that this fear is misplaced or incomplete. Humbaba is terrifying because nature is terrifying, not because it is evil. The true danger lies in humanity's refusal to accept limits, in its desire to dominate rather than coexist. Humbaba also embodies divine law and the concept of taboo. The cedar forest is not forbidden because it is evil, but because it is holy. By crossing into it with violent intent, Gilgamesh and Enkidu violate a sacred boundary. This theme resonates strongly with later religious and mythological traditions, where forbidden spaces, guarded by fearsome beings, test human obedience and humility. Humbaba stands among these guardians, a threshold figure whose defeat brings not enlightenment but punishment. In later interpretations and retellings, Humbaba is sometimes softened, portrayed as tragic or misunderstood. Modern readers often sympathize with him, seeing parallels between his role and contemporary concerns about environmental destruction and imperial conquest. Humbaba's guardianship of a natural resource, his demonization by those who seek to exploit it, and his ultimate death reflect a pattern that repeats throughout history. In this way, Humbaba transcends his ancient origins and speaks to enduring human conflicts. Despite his death, Humbaba's presence lingers throughout the epic. His curse echoes in Enkidu's illness, his memory haunts Gilgamesh's dreams, and his role as a boundary keeper remains central to the story's moral framework. He is not forgotten because he was not meaningless. Humbaba's function is to be violated, so that the consequences of violation can be understood. Through him, the myth teaches that not all victories are just, and not all monsters deserve to die. In the broader context of Sumerian mythology, Humbaba reflects a worldview deeply concerned with balance, duty, and divine hierarchy. Gods assign roles, and those roles maintain cosmic stability. When humans disrupt this order, even with divine assistance, they invite suffering. Humbaba's tragedy lies in his obedience. He does exactly what he is commanded to do, yet he is slain and condemned as a monster. His fate exposes the fragility of justice in a world governed by power rather than morality. Ultimately, Humbaba is a mirror held up to humanity. He reveals how easily fear justifies violence, how ambition disguises itself as heroism, and how sacred boundaries are broken in the name of progress. Far from a simple antagonist, Humbaba is a necessary figure whose death propels the epic toward its deeper philosophical questions. Through him, the Epic of Gilgamesh confronts the limits of human power, the cost of defying divine order, and the sorrow that follows unchecked desire. Humbaba endures not as a defeated monster, but as a warning carved into the oldest surviving story of civilization. 3. Fenrir, Norse mythology. Fenrir stands among the most terrifying and philosophically complex figures in Norse mythology, not merely as a monstrous wolf, but as a living embodiment of fate, inevitability, and the consequences of divine fate. His story is woven through the prose Edda and poetic Edda, where he appears not as an accidental villain, but as a being shaped into destruction by prophecy and betrayal. Fenrir is the son of the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angroda, making him kin to other apocalyptic figures such as Jörmungandr, the world's serpent, and Hel, queen of the dead. From both, Fenrir's existence signals catastrophe, for the gods foresee that he will play a decisive role in Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Unlike many mythological monsters that dwell in distant wilderness, Fenrir is raised among the uneasy themselves. Odin, ever seeking knowledge of the future, is aware of prophecies foretelling that Loki's children will bring ruin upon the gods. Jörmungandr is cast into the sea. Hel is banished to the underworld, but Fenrir alone remains in Asgard. This decision is crucial, for it reveals the gods' belief that proximity might grant control. Yet Fenrir grows at an unnatural rate, both in size and strength, and only the god Tyr dares to feed him. This detail is significant. Fenrir is not inherently hostile at first. He is feared, yes, but not yet violent. The god's fear precedes his wrath, and this imbalance defines the tragedy of his myth. As Fenrir matures, the god's anxiety turns to desperation. They decide he must be restrained before the prophecy can unfold. Twice they attempt to bind him with mighty chains, first with Linga and then with Dromi, both forged with great effort by the gods themselves. Each time, Fenrir agrees to be bound, treating the act as a test of strength, and each time he shatters the fetters with ease. These failed attempts demonstrate that conventional power cannot restrain fate. The more the gods struggle to dominate Fenrir, the clearer it becomes that their tools are insufficient against what he represents. In their final attempt, the gods turn to the dwarfs, mastersmiths of the cosmos. From them comes Gleipnir, a ribbon-like binding that appears delicate but is forged from impossible ingredients. The sound of a cat's footsteps, a woman's beard, the roots of a mountain, a bay's sinews, a fish's breath, and a bird's spittle. Each element symbolizes something unreal or absent, suggesting that Gleipnir is made not from matter, but from paradox. This is one of the most profound moments in Norse myth, for it implies that only illusion, deception, and denial can temporarily contain destiny. Fenrir immediately senses the trick. Unlike the earlier bindings, Gleipnir feels wrong to him, and he suspects betrayal. He agrees to be bound only if one of the gods places a hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. None but Tyr accepts. When Fenrir struggles and finds himself trapped, he bites down, severing Tyr's hand. This act is not mere savagery. It is a response to broken trust. Fenrir has been deceived, and his violence is the consequence of divine dishonesty. Tyr, the god of law and honor, becomes both hero and victim, embodying the price of maintaining order through treachery. Bound on the island of Lyngvi, Fenrir is further humiliated. A sword is wedged in his jaws to prevent him from biting, and his saliva becomes a river, Van. Fenrir is transformed from a growing presence into a static symbol of suppressed catastrophe. Yet the binding does not negate prophecy, it merely postpones it. In Norse cosmology, fate cannot be avoided, only delayed. Fenrir's captivity is therefore not a victory, but an illusion of control that allows the gods to persist in a fragile order. At Ragnarok, the illusions collapse. Fenrir breaks free of Gleipnir, fulfilling the destiny the gods tried to prevent. His jaws gape so wide that they touch heaven and earth, a cosmic image of total annihilation. He charges across the battlefield, devouring everything in his path, until he confronts Odin himself. The All-Father, god of wisdom and foresight, is swallowed whole by the very fate he sought to outmaneuver. This moment is the ultimate expression of Norse fatalism. Knowledge of the future does not grant escape from it. Fenrir's death comes at the hands of Vyar, Odin's silent son, who avenges his father by tearing the wolf's jaws apart. Even this victory is bittersweet. The cost of Fenrir's destruction is the death of Odin and the collapse of the old world. Fenrir is not defeated to preserve the existing order, but to make way for renewal. After Ragnarok, a new world rises, purified and reshaped, suggesting that Fenrir's role, though monstrous, is also necessary. Symbolically, Fenrir represents the terror of uncontrolled growth and the fear of what cannot be governed. He is the embodiment of nature's raw force, indifferent to divine authority. The god's attempt to bind him reflects humanity's desire to restrain chaos through systems, laws, and deception. Yet the myth insists that repression breeds destruction. Fenrir becomes monstrous because he is treated as monstrous before he truly is. His rage is cultivated, not innate. Fenrir also embodies the ethical tension at the heart of Norse mythology. The gods are not purely good. They are pragmatic, fearful, and willing to commit moral wrongs to delay their doom. By breaking faith with Fenrir, they ensure the very hatred they fear. This cyclical causality is central to Norse thought, where actions ripple forward into inevitable consequences. Fenrir's vengeance is therefore not unjustified within the logic of the mythic world. In modern interpretation, Fenrir has come to symbolize rebellion against unjust authority and the dangers of suppressing the feared or misunderstood. He is often reimagined as a tragic figure rather than a simple villain, reflecting contemporary discomfort with narratives that justify oppression in the name of order. Fenrir's myth warns against the belief that force and deceit can permanently solve existential threats. Ultimately, Fenrir is not merely a wolf destined to kill a god. He is a mirror held up to the Izu, reflecting their fear, their failures, and their refusal to accept the limits of power. His story asserts that fate, once set in motion, demands its due. The tragedy of Fenrir lies not in his destruction, but in the inevitability that shaped him. Bound by lies, raised in fear, and unleashed in apocalypse, Fenrir remains one of mythology's most enduring symbols of the cost of denying destiny. The name Fenrir itself carries layered meaning. Scholars often connect it to the Old Norse word fen, meaning marsh or mire, suggesting something that dwells in dangerous, unstable ground. Others associate it with fini, implying greed or devouring hunger. Linguistically, Fenrir is thus framed as both environmental threat and existential appetite. This aligns with the Norse worldview, in which the wilderness is not romanticized but feared as a place where order dissolves. Fenrir is the wolf of that boundary, standing between the safety of the hall and the chaos beyond it. Wolves in Norse culture already occupied an ambiguous symbolic role. They were admired for strength and cunning, yet feared as predators and omens of death. Odin himself is accompanied by wolves, Jerry and Freki, creatures of loyalty and controlled savagery. Fenrir, by contrast, is the wolf that cannot be mastered. He represents the point where admiration turns to terror. The myth therefore explores the thin line between harnessed power and unleashed destruction, a theme that resonates throughout Germanic heroic literature. Comparatively, Fenrir shares traits with other mythological figures who embody apocalyptic forces born from divine anxiety. In Greek myth, Typhon is imprisoned beneath the earth after challenging Zeus, only to cause earthquakes and storms through his confinement. In Mesopotamian tradition, Tiamat is slain to create cosmic order, her body becoming the structure of the world. Fenrir differs in that he is neither fully destroyed nor fully victorious. Instead, he participates in a cyclical destruction that allows rebirth. This reflects the uniquely Norse conception of time as recursive rather than linear. Fenrir's relationship with Loki also deserves examination. Loki is a liminal figure, a god who thrives on disruption and ambiguity. Fenrir inherits this liminality, existing between beast and destiny, victim and executioner. Yet unlike Loki, Fenrir does not scheme or deceive. He acts directly, driven by circumstance rather than cunning. In this way, Fenrir may be seen as the physical manifestation of Loki's abstract chaos, stripped of irony and transformed into inevitability. The ethical weight of Fenrir's binding has fascinated modern scholars and storytellers. Some interpretations frame the god's actions as necessary evils, arguing that the safety of the cosmos justified the betrayal of one being. Others reject this utilitarian logic, viewing Fenrir as a scapegoat sacrifice to preserve divine comfort. The myth refuses to resolve this tension. Instead, it presents a world where moral purity is impossible and every choice accelerates fate. In ritual and poetic contexts, Fenrir likely functioned as a warning figure. His story cautioned against hubris, especially the belief that foresight equates to control. Odin knows the prophecy, Yet his knowledge becomes a source of suffering rather than salvation. Fenrir thus reinforces a central Norse lesson. Wisdom is valuable, but it does not grant exemption from doom. Courage lies not in avoidance, but in facing the inevitable with honor. Even Fenrir's death is symbolically charged. Vyar defeats him not through cleverness, but through endurance and silence. Equipped with a thick shoe made from scraps of leather, Vyar represents accumulated human effort and patience. Where the gods failed through haste and fear, the next generation succeeds through resilience. Fenrir's end therefore signals not the triumph of order, but the transition from one cosmic age to another. In the end, Fenrir remains a figure of profound ambiguity. He is monster and martyr, destroyer and necessary agent of renewal. His myth endures because it speaks to universal fears, the fear of what grows beyond control, the fear of consequences deferred, and the fear that attempts to prevent disaster may instead ensure it. Fenrir teaches that some forces cannot be chained without cost, and that fate, once denied, returns with greater fury. Through Fenrir, Norse mythology confronts the darkest truth of existence, that endings are not failures, but transformations written into the fabric of being. Fenrir's howl echoes beyond myth, reminding each age that fear shapes enemies as surely as prophecy. To confront the wolf is to confront the limits of authority, the ethics of survival, and the certainty of change. In accepting Fenrir's role, the Norse imagination acknowledges that destruction and creation are bound together, and that even the gods must yield to the rhythm of ending and beginning woven into the cosmos forever eternally. 4. Apophis, Egyptian mythology. Apophis, known in ancient Egyptian as Apep, is one of the most formidable and enduring embodiments of chaos in world mythology. Unlike gods who possess temples, priesthoods, and hymns of praise, Apophis was never worshipped. He was feared, resisted, named only to be subdued, and written into existence as an enemy that had to be ritually destroyed. In Egyptian cosmology, Apophis represents Isfet, the principle of disorder, non-being, and cosmic dissolution that eternally threatens Mat, the divine order sustaining the universe. Through this opposition, Apophis becomes not merely a monster but a necessary adversary, defining the fragility of creation itself. Apophis is most commonly depicted as a colossal serpent, vast enough to coil around the underworld or swallow the solar black hole. This serpentine form is not incidental. In Egyptian symbolism, the snake could represent protection and renewal, but Apophis embodies the inverse, the snake as annihilation, darkness, and stagnation. His body is said to stretch endlessly, an image suggesting infinity without meaning, duration without purpose. Some texts describe him with multiple coils, blazing eyes, or a head armed with knives, reinforcing the idea that he is a living weapon aimed at the cosmos. The primary myth surrounding Apophis centers on his nightly battle with Ra, the sun god. Each evening, as Ra descends into the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, Apophis lies in wait. The sun's journey through darkness is not automatic or guaranteed. It is a perilous passage contested every night. Apophis attempts to halt the solar bark by swallowing it, binding it in his coils, or paralyzing it with hypnotic power. If he were to succeed, dawn would never come, time would stop, and creation would collapse into eternal night. This myth reflects a distinctly Egyptian understanding of time as cyclical yet vulnerable. The sunrise is not assured by mechanical law but earned through divine struggle. Each dawn is a victory, not a certainty. Apophis thus gives cosmic drama to everyday existence. The rising sun is evidence that chaos has been defeated once again, but never finally. Apophis is not killed in any permanent sense. He is repelled, wounded, dismembered, burned, or bound, only to return the next night. Chaos cannot be eliminated, only contained. Ra does not face Apophis alone. He is aided by a retinue of gods, including Set, who plays a particularly complex role. Although Set himself is associated with violence, storms, and disruption, he stands at the prow of Ra's bark as its defender, spearing Apophis with relentless fury. This paradox highlights an essential Egyptian insight. Controlled chaos can be used to fight greater chaos. Set's aggression is dangerous within the world of humans, yet indispensable on the cosmic battlefield. Order does not triumph through purity alone, but through the disciplined use of force. Other deities also participate in the nightly defense. Isis employs magic and binding spells. Thoth uses words of power and cosmic knowledge. And Mayhen, a protective serpent, coils around Ra to shield him from attack. These collaborations emphasize that the maintenance of Mat requires balance, cooperation, and constant vigilance. Apophis, by contrast, stands alone. He has no allies, no cult, and no redeeming narrative. His isolation reinforces his nature as absolute negation. Beyond mythic narrative, Apophis played a significant role in Egyptian ritual practice. Priests performed ceremonies specifically designed to weaken and destroy him. These rites included the recitation of spells, the stabbing of wax effigies shaped like serpents, and the burning or trampling of his image. Texts such as the Book of Overthrowing Apophis provided detailed instructions for these acts, down to the timing, gestures, and words required. By enacting violence against Apophis symbolically, humans participated in the cosmic struggle, reinforcing the triumph of order through ritual action. Language itself was considered a weapon against Apophis. His name was often written with determinatives indicating evil or danger, and sometimes deliberately misspelled or broken to diminish his power. In some contexts, simply naming Apophis was risky, as acknowledgement could grant him strength. This belief underscores the Egyptian conviction that reality is shaped by speech, writing, and intention. Words sustain the universe, and corrupted words can unravel it. Apophis exists where language fails, where meaning dissolves into noise and silence. Philosophically, Apophis represents more than external chaos. He embodies the ever-present possibility of unmaking. Floods, eclipses, droughts, political collapse, and moral decay could all be understood as manifestations of Apophis pressing against the boundaries of order. He is the explanation for why the world must be actively maintained rather than passively trusted. In this sense, Apophis is not merely mythological but existential. He expresses the anxiety that beneath the apparent stability of life lies an abyss that must be continually resisted. Apophis also reveals a striking contrast between Egyptian and later apocalyptic traditions. He is not a rebel angel, a fallen god, or moral tempter. He does not seduce humanity or promise forbidden knowledge. He simply seeks to stop the sun, to end movement, to return all things to inert darkness. His evil is not seductive but annihilative. There is no bargain to be made with Apophis, no lesson to be learned from him. He is the void given form. Yet paradoxically, Apophis gives meaning to order by opposing it. Without his threat, Mat would be static and untested. The nightly victory over Apophis renews the gods themselves, reaffirming their purpose and power. Even humanity's moral obligations are mirrored in this cosmic battle. To live justly, speak truthfully, and perform proper rituals is to side with Ra against Apophis. Ethical life becomes a microcosmic reenactment of the sun's journey through darkness. Over time, the image of Apophis influenced later representations of chaos and evil. The idea of a monstrous serpent opposing a solar or divine force appears in various cultures, from Near Eastern dragon myths to later religious symbolism. However, Apophis remains distinct in that he is not a rival creator or alternative ruler. He does not seek dominion, he seeks cessation. His ultimate goal is not control but silence. In Egyptian funerary texts, Apophis also appears as an obstacle the deceased must avoid, overcome. The dead, traveling through the duat, recite spells to ward off serpents, shadows, and devourers, echoes of Apophis's presence. Successfully navigating these dangers aligns the soul with Ra's triumph and ensures rebirth alongside the rising sun. Failure risks dissolution, a fate worse than punishment, erasure from memory and existence. Apophis endures because he articulates a profound truth about the human condition. Order is not self-sustaining. Light does not persist without effort. Every dawn, every stable society, Every coherent self is the result of ongoing resistance to forces that would undo them. By personifying those forces, Egyptian mythology gives shape to an abstract fear and provides a ritualized means of confronting it. In the end, Apophis is never finally defeated, and that is precisely the point. His persistence affirms that existence is an active process, not a settled state. The sun rises because it must fight to rise. Meaning survives because it is defended against meaninglessness. Through Apophis, Egyptian mythology offers a vision of the universe not as a static creation, but as a fragile achievement, renewed daily through struggle. In that eternal conflict, Apophis remains the shadow against which light defines itself, forever wounded, forever returning, and forever necessary to the story of the world. The symbolic geography associated with Apophis further deepens his meaning within Egyptian thought. He is often linked to the deepest regions of the duat, places without stars, wind, or water, where movement itself becomes impossible. These zones are described as inverted reflections of the ordered world, emphasizing absence rather than presence. Where Ra brings light, Apophis brings obscurity. Where Mat establishes proportion, Apophis distorts scale and direction. Even space becomes unreliable in his domain, reinforcing the idea that chaos is not merely disorder, but the breakdown of the conditions that allow reality to function. Astronomical phenomena were sometimes interpreted through the lens of Apophis. Solar eclipses, in particular, were understood as moments when Apophis had partially succeeded in attacking the sun. These events provoked fear and ritual response, as the temporary darkening of the sky suggested that the cosmic balance had been threatened. Rather than inspiring passive awe, eclipses demanded action. Prayers, chants, and protective rites intended to assist Ra in his struggle. The heavens were not distant mechanisms but battlegrounds intimately connected to human behavior. Apophis also occupies a unique place in Egyptian magical texts as the archetype of the enemy to be named, cursed, and undone. Lists of demons, serpents, and hostile forces often culminate in Apophis as the ultimate adversary. To know his many names was to gain power over him. Yet this knowledge had to be handled carefully, as improper use could invite the very chaos it sought to banish. This tension reflects the broader Egyptian attitude toward magic itself, which was seen as a neutral force capable of preserving order or unleashing catastrophe, depending on intention and discipline. The enduring power of Apophis lies in his abstraction. He is not bound to a specific historical crisis, ruler, or moral failing. Instead, he exists wherever systems fail, rhythms break, and coherence dissolves. This universality allowed Apophis to remain relevant across centuries of Egyptian history, from the Old Kingdom through the Ptolemaic period. As political regimes changed and religious emphases shifted, the serpent of chaos remained a constant, reminding each generation that stability is temporary and vigilance eternal. In modern interpretation, Apophis can be read as a mythic expression of entropy, the tendency of systems to move toward disorder. Long before scientific language existed to describe such processes, Egyptian thinkers gave them narrative form. The nightly struggle against Apophis dramatizes the cost of maintaining complexity in a universe inclined toward collapse. Seen in this light, the myth is not primitive but profoundly perceptive, recognizing that creation is sustained not by a single act, but by continual resistance to dissolution. Apophis therefore stands as one of mythology's most uncompromising symbols. He offers no redemption arc, no hidden wisdom, no tragic backstory. His purpose is singular and absolute. By confronting such a figure night after night, Egyptian religion affirmed a worldview grounded not in naive optimism, but in disciplined hope. The sun will rise, not because it must, but because gods and humans alike commit themselves to the work of preserving light against the encroaching dark. Apophis ultimately reminds humanity that meaning survives only through effort, courage, and repetition. Each ritual, ethical choice, and spoken truth becomes a spear thrust against the coils of unbeing. The ancient Egyptians did not deny darkness, they confronted it nightly. In doing so, they left a legacy that still speaks. Chaos is real, but it can be resisted, again and again, so long as vigilance endures across ages, cultures, minds, and worlds. 5. The Chimera, Greek mythology. The Chimera stands among the most disturbing creations of Greek mythology, not merely because of its monstrous form, but because of what it represents within the ancient Greek understanding of chaos, hybridity, and divine punishment. Unlike many mythic beasts that guard treasures or sacred places, the Chimera exists as a roaming calamity, a living violation of natural order. It is described most famously as a creature with the body of a lion, the head of a goat emerging from its back, and a serpent or dragon for a tail, capable of breathing fire. This grotesque fusion was not accidental. In Greek thought, monstrosity often emerged when boundaries were broken, between species, between elements, or between mortal and divine law. The Chimera is the embodiment of such transgression, a being that should not exist and therefore brings devastation simply by existing. According to Hesiod's Theogony, the Chimera was born of two of the most fearsome primordial monsters, Typhon and Echidna. This lineage matters greatly. Typhon represented raw cosmic destruction, a storm giant who challenged Zeus himself, while Echidna was the mother of monsters, half woman and half serpent, dwelling beneath the earth. From this pairing came beings designed not to coexist with humanity but to test, punish, or annihilate it. The Chimera's siblings include Cerberus, the Hydra, and Ortherus, each a manifestation of divine hostility toward the mortal world. The Chimera, however, differs in that it is not stationed as a guardian. It wanders, burns fields, slaughters livestock, and spreads terror indiscriminately, functioning as an uncontrolled curse unleashed upon the land. Geographically, the Chimera is most often associated with Lycia in Asia Minor, a region known in antiquity for volcanic activity and natural gas fires that burned perpetually from the earth. Ancient writers likely drew upon these phenomena when imagining a fire-breathing beast that scorched the countryside. In this sense, the Chimera may represent an early mythologization of environmental disaster, earthly forces given monstrous form so they could be understood, feared, and narrated. Greek myths frequently personified natural dangers, transforming earthquakes, storms, and plagues into entities with intent and personality. The Chimera's flames echo this tradition, making it both a supernatural monster and a symbolic explanation for uncontrollable destruction arising from the land itself. The physical structure of the Chimera is deeply symbolic. The lion, traditionally associated with kingship, strength, and dominance, forms the primary body. This suggests overwhelming power and authority. The goat, an animal linked to fertility but also to wildness and sacrificial rites, emerges unnaturally from its back, screaming and biting. The serpent tail, a symbol of death, rebirth, and chthonic knowledge, completes the form. Together, these elements create a creature that defies singular interpretation. It is not merely strong, not merely cunning, not merely deadly. It is all of these simultaneously. This composite nature reflects Greek anxiety about forces that cannot be categorized or controlled, a fear that order itself can fracture into something incoherent and lethal. The Chimera's reign of terror eventually provokes a heroic response, as chaos in Greek mythology almost always does. This response comes in the form of Bellerophon, a hero whose own story is marked by false accusation, exile, and divine intervention. King Iobates of Lycia, hoping to rid himself of Bellerophon without openly murdering him, assigns the impossible task of slaying the Chimera. This narrative detail is crucial. The Chimera is considered unbeatable by ordinary means. It is not meant to be faced directly. The assignment itself is a death sentence disguised as a quest, reinforcing the monster's reputation as an embodiment of inevitability and doom. Bellerophon succeeds only through a combination of ingenuity and divine aid. With the help of Pegasus, the winged horse born from the blood of Medusa, he attacks the Chimera from the air, avoiding its flames and fangs. In some versions of the myth, Bellerophon uses a spear tipped with lead, which melts in the Chimera's fire and suffocates it from within. This method of victory is significant. The Chimera is not overcome by brute force alone, but by intelligence and adaptation. Greek heroism often emphasizes metis, or cunning intelligence, alongside strength. The monster that violates natural order is destroyed by a strategy that turns its own unnatural power against it. The death of the Chimera does not mark the end of its significance. Rather, it cements its role as a cautionary symbol. The creature's defeat reinforces the idea that chaos, no matter how overwhelming, can be contained through balance between human ingenuity and divine favor. Yet Bellerophon's later fate complicates this message. After his triumphs, he attempts to ascend to Olympus itself, an act of hubris that results in his downfall. This narrative pairing suggests that while monsters like the Chimera represent external chaos, arrogance and overreach represent internal chaos. One can slay the beast and still be destroyed by the same forces it embodied if humility is lost. Philosophically, the Chimera became a metaphor for impossibility and illusion in later Greek thought. To call something chimerical was to label it unreal, incoherent, or fabricated from incompatible parts. This usage reflects the monster's very anatomy, a being assembled from fragments that should not coexist. In this way, the Chimera transcended myth and entered language, shaping how generations understood deception, false hopes, and impossible ideals. It became not only a creature of legend but a conceptual tool, a way to articulate skepticism toward claims that defied logic or nature. In art, the Chimera was a popular subject in ancient Greek and Etruscan sculpture, most famously in the bronze Chimera of Arezzo. These representations often emphasize tension and ferocity, capturing the creature mid-snarl, muscles coiled, flames implied even in static metal. The persistence of these images suggests that the Chimera fascinated ancient viewers not solely as a villain, but as a marvel. It was terrifying, yes, but also compelling, a testament to the imagination's ability to assemble fear into form. To behold the Chimera was to confront the beauty and horror of disorder simultaneously. Ultimately, the Chimera endures because it reflects a fundamental human fear, that the world can become something unrecognizable, hostile, and fused from contradictions. It is the nightmare of a reality where categories collapse and danger emerges from their collapse. Greek mythology gave this fear a body, a roar, and fire-filled lungs. Though slain by a hero long ago, the Chimera survives in language, art, and thought, reminding us that chaos is never truly destroyed, only temporarily mastered. 6. Jörmungandr, the world serpent, Norse mythology. Jörmungandr, the world serpent of Norse mythology, is one of the most potent symbols of cosmic terror, balance, and inevitability in the ancient Scandinavian imagination. Born of transgression and prophecy, the serpent coils not only around the physical world but also around the conceptual limits of order itself. As the Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr embodies the tension between containment and chaos, between the god's fragile dominion and the vast, indifferent forces that encircle it. To understand Jörmungandr is to understand how Norse cosmology views fate, time, and the ultimate collapse of divine authority. Jörmungandr is the offspring of the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angroda, making him a sibling to Fenrir the wolf and Hel, queen of the dead. This lineage is crucial. Loki's children are not merely monsters. They are embodiments of future catastrophe. The gods, particularly Odin, become aware through prophecy that these offspring will play decisive roles in Ragnarok, the foretold end of the world. In response, the gods attempt preemptive containment. Fenrir is bound, Hel is cast into Niflheim, and Jörmungandr is hurled into the great ocean that surrounds Midgard, the realm of humans. This act of casting Jörmungandr into the sea is meant to neutralize him. Instead, it completes him. In the depths, the serpent grows so vast that he encircles the entire world, biting his own tail. This image immediately evokes the Ouroboros, a symbol found across cultures representing cyclical time, self-consumption, and eternal return. In the Norse context, however, the symbolism is darker. Jörmungandr's circular form does not promise renewal but containment under strain. The world exists because the serpent holds it, yet it will end because he releases it. Jörmungandr's position defines him as a liminal being. He exists at the boundary of the known world, neither fully within nor entirely outside creation. The ocean itself is a threshold, separating Midgard from the outer realms of giants and monsters. By dwelling there, Jörmungandr becomes the physical manifestation of the world's edge. He is what keeps chaos out and what guarantees that chaos will one day break in. This duality is central to Norse thought, where forces of destruction are not alien intrusions but necessary components of cosmic structure. The Serpent's most famous antagonist is Thor, the god of thunder and protector of humanity. Their conflict is mythically inevitable. Thor represents order through strength, the maintenance of boundaries through violence. Jörmungandr represents the boundary itself, alive, sentient, and resentful. Their encounters are less personal grudges than rehearsals for Ragnarok. Each meeting foreshadows the final clash that will end the Age of Gods. One of the most well-known episodes involving Jörmungandr occurs during Thor's fishing expedition with the giant Hymir. Disguised or not fully aware of the danger, Thor rows far into the ocean, farther than Hymir wishes to go. Using the head of an ox as bait, Thor hooks Jörmungandr and begins to pull him from the depths. The imagery is striking, the world's edge being dragged toward its center. As Thor braces himself, feet breaking through the boat, he raises his hammer Mjolnir to strike. At the crucial moment, Hymir, terrified, cuts the line, and Jörmungandr sinks back into the sea. This episode is rich in symbolic meaning. Thor nearly disrupts the cosmic balance by killing the serpent too early. Hymir's fear preserves the necessary order of fate. In Norse mythology, even the gods are subject to destiny. Jörmungandr cannot die until Ragnarok, because his death is structurally required for the world's end. The failure of Thor's strike reinforces the idea that violence alone cannot escape prophecy. Timing is everything, and even divine strength is constrained by cosmic law. Jörmungandr's role at Ragnarok is explicit and catastrophic. When the end begins, the serpent releases his tail, an act that signifies the breaking of the world's containment. He rises from the ocean, causing massive floods and poisoning the sky and land with his venom. The sea overflows its bounds, mirroring the collapse of all borders that once held reality together. This is not random destruction, but the fulfillment of long-established tension. In the final battle, Jörmungandr and Thor face each other directly. Thor succeeds in killing the serpent, smashing him with Mjolnir. Yet victory is hollow. After taking only 9 steps, Thor collapses and dies, poisoned by Jörmungandr's venom. This mutual destruction is essential. Neither force can survive the end intact. Order and chaos annihilate each other, clearing the ground for whatever comes after. The serpent's venom deserves particular attention. Unlike simple physical strength, venom represents corruption that lingers, spreads, and kills slowly. Even in death, Jörmungandr's influence persists. Thor's delayed collapse emphasizes that no victory over chaos is clean. The price of maintaining order is contamination, and the gods themselves are not immune. This reflects a deeply pessimistic view of power. Even righteous violence carries fatal consequences. Jörmungandr also reflects the Norse understanding of nature as hostile and indifferent. The sea was both a source of life and a constant threat for Scandinavian cultures. Storms, floods, and unseen depths inspired fear and respect. By personifying the ocean's danger as a conscious, malevolent being, the myth gives shape to environmental anxiety. Jörmungandr is not evil in a moral sense. He is inevitable, vast, and beyond negotiation. Importantly, Jörmungandr does not actively seek to destroy the world before Ragnarok. He waits. His patience reinforces the Norse emphasis on inevitability rather than moral struggle. Unlike Christian apocalyptic monsters, the world serpent is not a rebel against divine order. He is part of it. His existence is sanctioned by fate, and even Odin's attempts to avoid destiny only ensure its fulfillment. The image of Jörmungandr biting his own tail also suggests self-sustaining tension. The serpent maintains his own containment through self-restraint. When he releases his tail, the world ends not because something new happens, but because something long held in place is finally let go. This makes Ragnarok less an invasion and more a release, a structural failure built into creation from the beginning. In this sense, Jörmungandr can be read as a metaphor for suppressed forces within society or the self. What is pushed to the margins does not disappear. It grows, encircles, and waits. The Norse myths repeatedly warn against the illusion of permanent control. Binding Fenrir, casting out Jörmungandr, and ruling over hell are temporary measures. Fate is not avoided, only delayed. Jörmungandr's enduring power as a mythic figure lies in his scale and restraint. He is terrifying not because he constantly attacks, but because he exists, coiled and watching, defining the limits of the world. His silence is as significant as his eventual roar. He reminds both gods and humans that existence itself is precarious, held together by tension rather than harmony. Ultimately, Jörmungandr represents the Norse acceptance of cosmic tragedy. The world is not designed to be saved, only endured. The gods fight not to win forever, but to meet their end with honor. The world serpent's death alongside Thor affirms that meaning lies not in survival, but in fulfilling one's role within the vast, unforgiving structure of fate. In that sense, Jörmungandr is not merely a monster, but a cornerstone of Norse cosmology, coiled around existence itself, waiting for the moment when the world must finally break. Beyond the surviving Eddic poems and prose accounts, Jörmungandr's image likely resonated through oral tradition, skaldic poetry, and visual art. Though direct archaeological depictions are debated, serpentine motifs appear frequently in Viking Age carvings, runestones, and ship ornamentation. These winding forms, often interlaced and enclosing scenes, echo the conceptual role of the world serpent as both boundary and frame. Even when not explicitly named, the presence of a great encircling serpent would have been immediately understood by Norse audiences as a symbol of cosmic enclosure. Skaldic references to Jörmungandr often use kennings, indirect poetic phrases such as the encircler of lands or Thor's sea fish. These linguistic strategies emphasize the serpent's function rather than his personality. Jörmungandr is defined by what he does and where he is, not by speech or desire. This absence of voice further reinforces his role as an impersonal force. Unlike Loki, who speaks and schemes, or Fenrir, who rages against his bonds, the world's serpent remains silent until the end, reinforcing the theme of patient inevitability. Comparative mythology also sheds light on Jörmungandr's significance. World-encircling serpents or dragons appear in many traditions, from the Mesopotamian Tiamat to the Hindu Shisha. Yet Jörmungandr is distinct in that he is neither a creator nor a purely primordial being. He is born within the existing cosmic order and grows to threaten it from within. This makes him less a symbol of original chaos and more a symbol of accumulated tension. The Norse cosmos is not undone by an external enemy, but by forces it already contains. In modern interpretations, Jörmungandr is often romanticized as a symbol of rebellion or misunderstood monstrosity. However, this risks flattening his mythic role. He is not a tragic hero, nor a villain seeking freedom. He does not resent the gods in any explicit way. His conflict with Thor is structural, not emotional. They are opposite poles of the same system, destined to neutralize each other. Reducing Jörmungandr to a figure of resistance obscures the deeper Norse preoccupation with fate over choice. The ecological reading of Jörmungandr has also gained traction in contemporary scholarship. As a being whose movement poisons the sky and floods the land, the world serpent can be seen as a mythic articulation of environmental catastrophe. Human disruption of natural boundaries leads to systemic collapse. While the Norse did not conceptualize climate in modern terms, their myths reflect an acute awareness of nature's capacity to overwhelm human and divine structures alike. Jörmungandr's continued presence in modern media, from literature to video games, demonstrates the enduring power of his imagery. Yet these adaptations often emphasize spectacle over symbolism. The original myths are less concerned with the serpent's appearance than with his position. He is terrifying because he defines the world's limits. Once those limits dissolve, existence itself loses coherence. In the end, Jörmungandr stands as a reminder that in Norse mythology, Stability is temporary and endings are woven into beginnings. The world serpent is not an aberration, but a necessity. He circles the world so that it may exist, and he destroys it so that existence may change. His story is not about evil defeated, but about balance exhausted. Through Jörmungandr, the Norse myths articulate a universe where even the gods cannot escape the slow tightening coil of fate. Thus, Jörmungandr endures as an image of patience, pressure, and consequence, teaching that what surrounds us also defines us, and that the forces we fear most are often those we have already accepted as part of the world long before we recognize their final, devastating release arrives. 7. Kingu, Babylonian mythology. In Babylonian mythology, Kingu stands as one of the most tragic and symbolically charged figures in the Mesopotamian cosmic drama. He is not a creator god, nor a benevolent guardian of humanity, but a being born from chaos, elevated by ambition, and ultimately destroyed so that order may exist. Kingu's story is inseparable from the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, where his rise and fall explain not only the origins of divine authority, but also the nature of humanity itself. Through Kingu, the Babylonians explored themes of rebellion, illegitimate power, cosmic law, and the grim truth that civilization is built upon violence and sacrifice. Kingu is introduced not as an ancient primordial force like Apsu or Tiamat, but as a younger god whose importance comes from his alliance with chaos. He becomes significant only when the cosmos fractures into conflict. This detail matters, because Kingu is not chaos itself. He is its chosen instrument. His elevation is artificial, bestowed rather than earned, and this makes his rule unstable from the beginning. In Babylonian thought, legitimacy was everything. Kingship, whether divine or human, required recognition by the cosmic order. Kingu receives power without harmony, authority without balance, and this flaw seals his fate. To understand Kingu, one must first understand the mythic context of the Enuma Elish. In the beginning, the universe existed as undifferentiated waters. Apsu, the freshwater abyss, and Tiamat, the saltwater sea, mingled and produced the first generation of gods. These younger gods were noisy, restless, and disruptive. Their activity disturbed Apsu, who decided to destroy them to restore silence. Tiamat initially resisted this plan, but Apsu was slain by Ea, one of the younger gods, who then established his dwelling upon Apsu's corpse. This act shattered the primordial balance and planted the seeds of vengeance. Tiamat's grief and rage transformed her from a generative mother into a monstrous embodiment of chaos. She resolved to destroy the younger gods who had murdered her consort. It is at this moment that Kingu enters the myth as a central figure. Tiamat takes Kingu as her new consort, elevating him not merely as a companion but as a commander. She grants him the Tablet of Destinies, the supreme symbol of divine authority that allows its bearer to decree fate itself. By giving Kingu this tablet, Tiamat declares him her champion and makes him the general of a monstrous army. The Tablet of Destinies is crucial to understanding Kingu's role. In Mesopotamian belief, fate was not abstract. It was a tangible, enforceable cosmic law. Whoever held the tablet possessed the right to rule. Tiamat's decision to give this artifact to Kingu represents a radical inversion of order. She bypasses the established divine hierarchy and places ultimate authority in the hands of a god aligned with destruction. Kingu's kingship is therefore an act of rebellion against the natural structure of the cosmos. He is not crowned by consensus but armed by wrath. Kingu leads Tiamat's forces against the younger gods, commanding legions of monstrous beings, serpents, dragons, scorpion men, and hybrid horrors shaped from primordial terror. These creatures are not merely enemies. They represent the world before structure, before law, before civilization. Kingu's army embodies everything the Babylonians feared: the collapse of boundaries, the return of chaos, the dissolution of identity. As their leader, Kingu becomes the face of that fear, a symbol of illegitimate authority ruling through violence rather than order. The younger gods, terrified by Tiamat's power, seek a champion of their own. This role is taken by Marduk, a storm god whose strength lies not only in brute force but in strategic mastery. Marduk agrees to face Tiamat on the condition that he be granted supreme kingship afterward. Unlike Kingu, Marduk's authority is negotiated, recognized, and ratified by the divine assembly. This contrast is deliberate. Where Kingu's power is imposed, Marduk's is consented to. Where Kingu represents chaos-wielding power, Marduk represents order claiming it. The battle between Marduk and Tiamat is cosmic in scale, but Kingu's presence lingers as a looming threat. When Marduk ultimately defeats Tiamat, splitting her body to form the heavens and the earth, Kingu's cause collapses. Without Tiamat, his authority evaporates. He is captured, stripped of the Tablet of Destinies, and bound. The myth does not grant him a heroic death in battle. Instead, Kingu is reduced from commander to prisoner, from ruler to resource. Kingu's ultimate fate is one of the most disturbing elements of Babylonian mythology. Marduk executes him and uses his blood to create humanity. From Kingu's lifeblood, mixed with clay, humans are formed. This act is not portrayed as merciful. Humanity is created to serve the gods, to bear the labor once performed by divine beings. The origin of humanity is therefore tied directly to rebellion, punishment, and sacrifice. Humans are born from the blood of a traitor god, forever marked by that inheritance. This aspect of the myth reveals a deeply pessimistic view of human nature. To the Babylonians, humanity is not divine by design but functional by necessity. Humans exist because a rebel god was slain, and his essence repurposed. This explains why humans are capable of disobedience, violence, and ambition, yet are expected to serve cosmic order. Kingu's blood becomes a metaphysical explanation for humanity's internal conflict, the pull between chaos and obedience. Kingu's symbolic role extends beyond his narrative function. He represents the danger of power divorced from legitimacy. His kingship is rooted in resentment and granted through destruction rather than harmony. In Babylonian political thought, this served as a warning. Kings who ruled without divine sanction, who seized authority through rebellion, were seen as echoes of Kingu. Their reigns were considered unstable and doomed, just as his was. There is also a moral ambiguity in Kingu's portrayal. While he is condemned as a rebel, his rebellion is born from loyalty. He does not rise for personal glory alone but as Tiamat's champion. In this sense, Kingu is both villain and victim, manipulated by a cosmic conflict larger than himself. His execution is not justice in a moral sense, but necessity in a cosmic one. Order demands his death, regardless of his intentions. In later interpretations, Kingu becomes a cautionary archetype rather than a fully developed deity. He embodies failed kingship, the cost of defying cosmic law, and the inevitability of order-crushing chaos. Unlike demons or monsters, Kingu is tragic because he once held divine authority. His fall demonstrates that power granted by chaos is always temporary. Kingu's legacy endures not through worship but through consequence. Humanity itself is his final monument. Every act of labor, every struggle against authority, every impulse toward rebellion is, in Babylonian thought, a whisper of Kingu's blood within human veins. He does not rule the world, but he is embedded within it. In the end, Kingu is not remembered as a god to be feared or revered, but as a necessary sacrifice. His death enables creation, but at a terrible cost. Through Kingu, Babylonian mythology confronts a grim truth. Order is born from violence, civilization from execution, and humanity from the blood of a condemned god. This is not a comforting origin story, but it is an honest one, reflecting a worldview shaped by fragile cities, hostile nature, and the constant threat of collapse. Kingu stands as the eternal reminder that chaos does not vanish. It is merely repurposed, flowing quietly beneath the surface of the world. As we reach the end of this journey through ancient fear and forgotten power, remember, these legendary creatures were more than myths. They were symbols of chaos, balance, and the limits of even divine control. Gods may rule the heavens, but these beings prove that no power is truly absolute. Their stories survive because they were warnings, etched into legend to remind humanity what lies beyond mortal and immortal boundaries. If you enjoyed uncovering these dark myths, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, keep questioning the legends and respect the shadows they left behind.